It is the most hotly disputed slot in Irish media. It's Eoin Sheahan's Power Rankings.
Some of these critics, these pundits,
I absolutely adore them lads. I have unbelievable time for them, but they're a great bunch, but it's not acceptable.
They like to play the hard man when they're on it. It's not very pleasant when you're trying to manage a team. All you're looking for is a bit of civility and a bit of decency, but they just miss you like you know, you have nothing to do with the bloody occasion.
We've made the mistake a few times of getting stuck in the early pages here, and I know there should be fairly significant movement to the early pages because you've completely underrated some of the very important games that have happened in Division 3 and Division 4 because you are a colonial superpower and that's where you're from. It's not your fault really, you're kind of born into it. It's like the patriarchy, you're as much a victim of it as anybody. But quickly let's go through this because I suspect page 1 is where the detail is at its most fiery today.
Yeah, let's go through from 32 to 1. There is a change at the bottom of the power rankings for the first time in 2 years. Carlow are down to bottom place and London leapfrogged them after beating them. It was their first match in 23 months, 9 debutants at the weekend. They were 10 points down at one stage in the game and they end up beating Carlow. They haven't won their opening game in the league in 11 years, and that was a game against Kilkenny in the 2011 league. It was one hell of a result for London at the weekend, so they move up to 31. Leitrim and non-mover at 30. They were a point down at half time against Cavan. Cavan pulled away from them a little bit in the second half. Wexford down to 29. Waterford are up to 28. A good result against Tipperary at the weekend. They drew with Tip. Aoife Fitzgerald is now the man in charge of Waterford. Wicklow staying put at 27. And then at Sligo, you've got 26. You've got Sligo coming up there, 3 spots. They were level with Wexford 4 different times in the second half. And then they ended up grinding it out in the end. So a good result for them. And then finally on the first page, Louth in at number 25. They lost to Laois by 5 points at the weekend, but not a bad display from them. Next up, number 24, Longford. They're down a place. They were beaten by Limerick by 7 points at the weekend. Fermanagh in at number 23. They were favourites for that game against Antrim at the weekend, according to the bookies, but they ended up losing by 9 points. Tipperary in at number 22. County plummeting at the moment, I think it's fair to say.
They're lucky to be at 22?
Yeah, I mean, Fermanagh and Longford also had very disappointing results. They were down, they were outside the 20 in their first power rankings of the year, and they were moved further from that.
Didn't Fermanagh have a bad result in Division 3 though? A whole division ahead of Tipperary.
I mean, you make a very valid point, but I mean, no, it's not. I'm not reading into that too much. Not enough to.
You're just throwing a blanket over 3 and 4, and that shouldn't be the case.
No. I'm just not moving Tipperary below Fermanagh at this point. That's the only decision I'm making here. Yes, both of these things can be very bad results. Tipperary should be beating Waterford if they've got any designs on getting promoted from Division 4. But at the moment, I'm not moving them below Fermanagh just yet. Tipperary had 5 debutants on the pitch at the weekend. That suggests a team in transition and not in a good transition.
Okay.
But it also potentially suggests a team that might get their act together over the next little while. Saw them play in pre-season; they weren't good at all. So I worry for Tipperary. I'm not going to try and paint a picture for them. And I think Munster football is in not a great place if you're looking at Tipperary and Cork, for example, 2 of the former pretenders to the crown. Laois are in at 21, up 3 spots. I mean, they look good in the O'Byrne Cup, narrow defeat to Dublin in the final of that one. They were good at the start of the second half against Louth. Like you mentioned a moment ago that a hurricane has ripped through the power rankings. It was a strong gust, literally, at all these grounds, which has completely torn his power rankings to shreds. And I think Laois, at the start of the second half, they get the wind at the weekend against Louth, and they scored 2-3 without reply as a result of that big win. So that was essentially the winning of the game.
So you're not sure? Some of this is a little bit weather dependent.
I'm 100% sure these are set in stone, completely correct, and just prophetic power rankings, I think it's fair to say. Not pathetic. Limerick, number 20, they're down 1 spot. So they're down 1 spot because of who's coming up above them, and we'll get to that in just a moment. They were they had a very good win against Longford at the weekend, to be fair to them. They won by 7 points. There was 2 points between them heading into injury time. They lost 3-5 from play in the first half. Limerick, I wonder who had the win in the first half. I actually don't know, but I assume it was Limerick. Antrim are up to 19. That was an excellent win for them at the weekend, beating Fermanagh by 9 points. So
coming force, I'm telling you.
The coming force. They could go one up in Ulster as well over the coming weeks. Down into 18th spot. Maybe a little bit harsh. They were beaten by 7 points by Derry at the weekend. Derry definitely a better team than Down at the moment.
Derry, if you want a massive long odds each way punt for the All Ireland, they're still at about 100 to 1. I'm like, there's of all the teams in Ulster last season are like they're the ones who must have had the longest, most grim winter, which was also kind of inspiring in its grimness. It was like, look how close we were. We didn't even realise how close we were.
Yeah, like I mean, they've had a particularly grim time because they've been going very well, and there's been no back door, so they've been put into the worst province. And I think it's been Donegal in back-to-back years.
I mean, I don't think they're going to win the All-Ireland, but I think that they could do an Armagh and come through the back door this year to an All-Ireland quarter-final and beat somebody good in a quarter-final.
Yeah, like
you don't want to see a Derry team who've come through the back door, won a load of games, found their style of play in an All-Ireland quarter-final this year.
No, like I mean, I think if you're going to be putting money on a team, you're probably going to go for the provincial championship first, do you? But then again, Derry's first game in the Ulster Championship is probably going to be against Tyrone. So, I mean, like, you want to get them early, I guess. Tyrone will have a game against Fermanagh before that at the championship. So we'll get to them in a moment. Just to sum up some of the other teams there. Cavan are in at 17. Obviously, they're too good for Division 4, I think. It'll be interesting to see how this actually plays out over the next little while. Is a 4-point win against Leitrim a good result? Like, are Leitrim also going to be pushing for promotion? I mean, obviously, there's a very high-profile manager there. We need to see how good the football is over the next little while. So I'm uncertain still about Cavan moving them up to 17. I will admit that. I will admit a chink in the armour of these power rankings and that, but we will see over the next little while. Offaly then at 16. They're staying put, maybe a little bit lucky to be staying put. They lost to Clare by 9 points in their opening game of the 2022 league, and maybe they can jump a couple of places, because as you can see there, Cork are in at number 15
in free fall. You're loving this.
Like I mean,
no, you kind of need you want to patronise your neighbour. So you want them to be reasonable, so you can go so you can enjoy the regular beatings that you hand out to them. They need to be reasonable, otherwise it just becomes like a bit of a car crash.
Like a little bit. And I mean, they will have their St Finbarr's players back over the next little while. On the other side of the column, Luke Connolly has departed the setup. When will the promising youngsters from under 20s level over the next couple of years become the spine of this team to become good? That is probably the big question for them. They have the man in charge who is probably best placed to be able to nurture this talent and take them to contending for Munster once again over the next couple of years. I don't think this year is going to be that year. We're running to
we're years
rushing
away
to conclusions at the moment, I think. Yeah, so Roscommon much better than them at the weekend. Westmeath, I've put them ahead of Cork this week because the reason why I didn't have them ahead of Cork was because Cork beat them in the big game last year. They faced off in what was a relegation playoff. Cork beat them by 6 points last year. So I kind of refused to put Westmeath ahead of Cork on that basis, despite the fact that Westmeath went out and beat Laois by 16 points in the championship last year. But after their contrasting results at the weekend, granted, one was in Division 3, one was in Division 2, I've decided to put Westmeath one over Cork. So
yeah, I mean, Westmeath should have beaten Kildare in the championship last year. They really should have. Like
2 points in the end or something like that. It was very tight.
It was absolute panic stations from, oh, we have a lead, let's defend the lead, let's be very conservative, was how the Kildare management approached the game. Maybe that's a pattern, I don't know, but we're glad that that's not going to be the case with the team this year. Anyway, they should have lost. Westmeath should have beaten them. And didn't Westmeath have there was some refereeing decision at the end that didn't go their way, that like there was massive controversy about that because it was Westmeath, didn't get a lot of play. But actually, I'm sure Westmeath were thinking about it. Heslin kicking point after point after point at the weekend as well. I think,
Yeah, I think they could possibly even be maybe looking to Meath, the actual Meath, over the next little while. They had obviously a terrible result that weekend. The 11-point defeat to Galway. It would have been worse were the conditions good, potentially. I mean, obviously Galway have a hurricane at their back in the first half, and maybe that's why Meath don't actually end up getting on the scoreboard.
Meath's shots efficiency though. Tommy made a big play of that.
Apparently Andy McEntee didn't speak to the media after the game at the weekend. Obviously was pretty annoyed. He's used over 80 players now during his stint in charge. Only Colm Collins and Kieran McGeeney have had longer stints with their current gig than Andy McEntee. Pressure is on this year, no question.
Well, it is. He didn't have the full unwavering support of the county board. We saw there were shenanigans going on there, and so I hope he turns it around. Likes to play football in the right way. A good Meath is good for everybody.
Yeah, and I think that we were maybe clinging to that notion on a nostalgic level a little bit as well. A good Meath is good for everybody, because realistically it was a second half performance against Dublin last year that was a comeback.
Well, and
was
also
the game dead.
Yeah,
previous couple of years,
the game was dead, but then it wasn't dead. That's how bad the Dubs were in that second half.
Yeah.
Like, again, if you were to go back and we might talk about this in a minute. Let's keep going.
I want to see more from me, to be honest with you. I think they could drop lower. Clare up to 12. Clare are the second best team in Munster now. I don't think there's much debate about that. For now, things can change, obviously. They beat Offaly by 9 points at the weekend. It was an excellent result for them. Roscommon up one place to 11 after their win against Cork, and Derry also on the rise after their win against Down. So Derry finally into the top 10 in the power rankings at this point. This is slightly controversial and something you're probably going to be a bit annoyed about. I just couldn't find room for Kildare in the top 8.
Screw you, Owen. Screw you.
Non-mover at number 9 after their draw with Kerry.
Look at this. It's like, oh, Kerry were terrible. You should see the WhatsApps. It was like, oh, Kerry. I'm like, well, hang on. What was it?
I was like, hang on. How did you get?
Were they playing on their own? Were they?
Yeah,
were they
training match.
There was like, they were literally kicking the ball into the gale force wind of the Atlantic, and for whatever reason, it was managing to go over their heads and over the bar.
Yeah. Incredible.
Okay, grand. That's fine. You continue to shit on us, Owen. That's fine. We will remember this.
So give me this.
We like accepted your manager who wasn't good enough for you. Now all of a sudden is good enough for you again. We like, oh, let him just like rebuild his confidence at inter-county level, and then hand him back to you happy. Well, I wish you all the best with that, Owen. I wish you all the best.
So give me who is. We'll go through the top 8 and
Galway.
Then you think they should be ahead of Galway?
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, but Galway are now back because they've got the haircuts and they're kicking points for fun on a gale force. Let's see you, Galway. We've seen this before. We know the movie. Galway are the best team in the world when things are going well for them, but when it's put up to them, crash.
And Kildare's record on that front?
Well, Kildare are just a common force. They've been in the doldrums for the best part of a decade.
What's your evidence for that?
They've been in the doldrums for a decade.
No,
we know that.
Your evidence for them not being a Galway. Let's move them.
Well, we don't have the flash forward that they have for a start, right? So, I mean, in fairness, Galway did beat us the last time they played us in a big game.
You don't have the flash forwards, as in the forwards that you think that this power rankings is based on, or?
I think that we're going to be ahead of Galway by the end of the season. I think we're ahead of Galway right now because we're a division ahead of them.
Well, I mean, Galway were
yes.
hold on. So Galway were ahead of Kildare going into last weekend. How can you make a case that Galway should be dropped a place after their performance? The biggest winning margin across all divisions at the weekend was Galway. You look at this Galway team at the moment, like, I mean, Shane Walsh in the league is just an incredible player. It's kind of akin to any kind of like flashy battery player getting complimented for Connacht, where it's like at the sports ground, people come there and they just don't know what the wind does to them. The same goes for Shane Walsh at Pearse Stadium. He is a beast this time of the year. They've got Damien Comer to come back. Sean Fitzgerald is a big injury for them. He was going to be a big back for them, and he'll come back. And Johnny Heaney's yet to come back.
Great.
So
I'm looking forward to it.
You will layer all that on top of them beating Meath by 11 points.
Why have they collapsed over the last couple of years? What's happened to them?
But like, I mean, you're trying to paint a picture here that I believe that Galway have a steeliness to them that's going to see them with the All-Ireland.
Yeah, exactly.
They're in at number 8. This is not exactly a lofty position.
There's a flakiness there that until they disprove, when someone shows you who they are, that's who they are. And they've been flaky.
And until Kildare disprove that they're flakiness, then they will be going no further as well. Like, let's see how the things develop. Monaghan are down to 7th place. They drew at Tyrone at the weekend. Donegal then are down 1 to 6th place. Disappointing start, I think, from Donegal's perspective when you look at the lead they had. The extra man.
You're just saying that the wind is really bad. I mean, they draw at Mayo and they're 3 points, three parts behind them. But okay,
well, it's the context of the draw. Like, having the extra man, having that lead.
Technically a home game for Mayo, even though it was in Markievicz Park. But
Donegal and Kerry did the exact same thing at the weekend, which was play a brand of football which was not based on confidence in them extending their leads, and they both let big leads slip, and they both are open to big criticism for what happened to them at the weekend. But open to bigger criticism, obviously, is Dublin, who are in 5th place at the moment. They lost to Armagh by 5 points.
Now, this is shocking. This is the first time this has ever happened. Like, Dublin, you took Dublin off number 1. I think we're Dublin still number 1 after the All-Ireland semi-finals last year. Until the All-Ireund final.
Mayo definitely went in at number 1.
Right,
definitely.
Okay. Well, that was they were 3rd. They were still 2nd, I suspect, were they?
Yeah, they were 2nd until last weekend, yeah.
And now they've gone from 2nd to 5th.
Yeah.
You're loving this. This must be the most enjoyable thing that you've ever done, is it?
No, it's not.
This is like,
fall of an empire is a terrible thing.
People talk about like their wedding day and the birth of their children. You're going to be like, well, it was that day that I made the Dubs 5th. It was amazing. How do you feel? This is like straight into the Dubs WhatsApp group.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I'm sure they'll be fuming with this. And
What
rightly
message
so.
do you have for them? Why are they fifth?
Well, I think, are you looking around at the other top four at the moment, and are you saying, do Armagh deserve to stay below Dublin first of all? I think on the evidence of Saturday night, especially because it's week one, and like I mean, it's the nature of these rankings that we have 100% of the evidence of the competitive season is last weekend.
Yeah,
these two teams faced off against each other. Armagh weren't that far below Dublin in the rankings anyway. I think that leapfrogging is fair enough. I think then, where are you putting Armagh? Are you putting them ahead of Mayo? Are you putting them ahead of Kerry? Are you putting them ahead of Tyrone? And I think the answer to all those three questions is no, not yet. Potentially, but not yet. So therefore, Armagh come into number 4, and you've got to take Dublin out of that top 4. So that's how you make this work. And Dublin end up at number 5. And I don't think it's I don't think it's like hyperbole to suggest that on the evidence of the year so far, they're in and around the 5th best team in the country. There is every chance that they come back over the next little while, and in 3 weeks' time are sitting at number 1 of these rankings.
On the basis of the performance we've seen so far?
On the basis of the performance we've seen so far, they are not in the top 4, no. But the performances have, as I said yesterday, been below par and below the standards of the players that were available to them on Saturday. And I do believe that there will be a bounce back from Dublin this year. I'm not convinced anymore that it will be a bounce back to get them over the line in an All-Ireland final this year, or to get them back on the Roll of Honour again. But I think that the bounce will happen at some stage. They're better, I think, than the 5th best team in the country. Or sorry, they will be better than the best 5th best team in the country. But as it stands, they're the 5th best team in the country.
You think they're going out in the quarterfinals?
I think that, yeah, I think that Armagh were convincing winners against them on Saturday. I think that if Dublin took on Mayo right now, I think Mayo would beat them again. And I think the same goes for Kerry and Tyrone.
Obviously, if it was played now, the two Ulster teams would have to knock each other out at some point, and so therefore one of them would be coming through the back door, and maybe they would end up playing the Dubs, but maybe they wouldn't, and so the Dubs get a handy enough All-Ireland quarter-final, because the system doesn't work. It's completely screwed up. We're going to talk about that again. Mark says, Galway are a Division 2 team. Kildare drew with the second best team on the power rankings. Surely that warrants moving upwards. 100% of the evidence of the season so far would suggest that Kildare are a match for Kerry. But no, because Galway hammered what we're saying is a bad Meath team.
There are worse teams than me. They're in net number 13.
So you beat the 13th place team, you stay in the top 8, you draw with the second best team, you don't move. This doesn't make any sense.
It does. It makes perfect sense. if you
hate Kildare, I get it. You get it. I understand.
No, Kildare have been famously very lovable county.
I always enjoy the fact that the power rankings are in the Mayo colours. Where Mayo after? So you're giving Mayo super bonus points for having a man sent off, saving a penalty, and needing the last gasp equaliser from their goalkeeper to squeak a point at home.
They'd stay in third place. You're not putting.
Would you not put Armagh? Do you not actually? The power rankings are going to be supposed to be like this is this week, snapshot of this week. At the moment, you'd have to say what Armagh did was absolutely annihilate Dublin in a league match, dominate them from start to finish. Maybe the second goal was a bit of a fluke, but they should have scored loads more goals. Dublin came back at them at the start of the second half, and Armagh were like, "Yeah, granted, is that all you got?
Yeah, what's
Armagh were Muhammad Ali.
Well, see, the thing is, I think what you're talking about here, Jerry, is
that was Rumble in the Jungle. They were taking out George Foreman.
You're actually taking a very patronising tone towards Armagh here.
I'm saying Armagh is the second best team in the country at the moment.
You're suggesting
that they should be number 2 in those power rankings.
that I tickled the belly on the basis of last Saturday, and yes, that could happen, but when you read, say, Ushie McConville, and it's the Examiner printing his comments this morning, he really believes that Armagh are back. This is not a one-off result. So let's see it happen. Let's see Armagh now back this up and beat Mayo, Kerry, or this weekend Tyrone, and then they rise. Of course they do. This is just a staging post. No need to get carried away with bringing Armagh up the rankings. They're on a nice slow burn all the way up. If they're really back. They will break into that top 3. So patience is all I ask for. We don't need to hand out those belly rubs just yet on that front. I think going up to 4 is a pretty good reflection of what's happened so far this year. And I don't think Mayo have necessarily deserved to get punished for what happened on Sunday. Because, you're pointing to things that indicated that they were chasing a game for a long time. But they did get back into it, and they did manage to get the draw. And I don't know, I would say, arguably there's a bit more bottle about this Mayo team now than some of the other teams around them, like the team they were up against in Donegal, and I would argue potentially in Kerry as well, and that's going to be a really interesting storyline as the year develops. The bottle that Kerry potentially don't have.
Kerry have no bottle.
I would say, and John Fogarty made this point this morning, that when Kerry win big games, they win by a big margin. And let's see, okay, so you can't really say last Sunday was a big game, and Kerry have struggled at times in the league over the last couple of years to maybe kill off a game like that. But it's just the timing of that result. Their first competitive game since the collapse against Tyrone last year, where they got inside their own heads, I believe, to a huge degree that day. And I believe that is the biggest problem for them this year, to try and get over this mentality mountain that they've created for themselves, where they maybe overcomplicate things at times and just look like they choke at the biggest moments, because that has been a repeated trend of this team over the last little while. Nobody would question the quality of footballer that they have. They've tried out a lot of different things in the backroom team, from Pat Falvey last year, Tony Griffin's come in working with Kerry this year. And the other thing from Fogarty's column today is that I think it's actually the headline on the front of the Examiners: do Kerry have the edge to win the All-Ireland? And when he asks that question, you know what the answer he believes is, and the answer he thinks is no. And like, really, if you're being honest about Kerry at the moment, do you think they have that edge? To like, if it's them versus Tyrone and it's 9 points apiece in a league final, or maybe in an All-Ireland final in particular.
It has to be an All-Ireland final for me to really care too much about what the outcome is going to be, because if they lose a league final to Tyrone, I don't care.
Okay, so go All-Ireland final against Tyrone, Mayo, Dublin. That's the level of scores going into injury time. Who are you backing?
Well, is Clifford fit?
Yeah, everybody's fit.
Okay, I think the time, if Kerry can't win that, something's gone wrong. Clifford is the best footballer. He's a generational talent in a way that we don't 100%. Have any other generational talents at the moment. We kind of thought that maybe it was him versus Con, but actually it's not. He is on a pedestal on his own. I was making the argument for Con for a long time, but Con came back to the pack last year and looked markable. Clifford is unmarkable.
He is.
At the weekend,
himself and O'Shea were outstanding against Tyrone last year. And
then he got injured and they lost the game. So when you're talking about the collapse,
I accept that. But like, I mean, there was signs of Kerry.
But there was signs of Tyrone
before that the cramp came for Clifford. Yes, if he was on the pitch, maybe they win the game. We don't know. We can only judge what we actually do know, and we do know that before Clifford got injured, there were a lot of other players on that team who'd been.
I'm not sure their defence is as strong as it needs to be, and I'm not sure they have the individual defenders who can live with the patterns of play that the best teams are exhibiting at the moment. We haven't seen that, and it's not Kerry's fault, but the system is so screwed that they don't get the opportunity to test their mettle against other Division 1 teams in championship environments. So they don't get to play Donegal, they don't get to play Monaghan, and they don't get to play Tyrone to go, what are the challenges for these guys? Are these two up as a partnership along the left side of our defence? Are these two in the middle of our defence? Are they good enough? When we need a sweeper, who's that sweeper going to be? And do they understand what the Tyrone players are doing with their movement, or what the Donegal players are doing with their movement? Who's marking Ryan McHugh? We don't get to test that.
Well, I know that may come across as a harsh question in Kerry's bottle, but I actually think that defensively, the early signs, if we're rushing to over-exaggerate things here, like I just have, then the defence looks better. There is an idea of a swarm tackling that has emerged, possibly under Paddy Tally. Maybe that's just sort of, we see Tally on the side and you're like, well, that's why that's happening. But also, like, the implementation of a sweeper is not something that Kerry have ever nailed in the past. It looks good at the moment with Tyg Morley playing as a sweeper. The problem that killed them on Sunday was in possession. They were too ponderous and weren't adventurous enough when they were 2 points up with 10 minutes to play, and Kildare came back into the game and drew with them. For me, that is a question of bottle and not having the self-confidence to actually go and win that game. Defensively, I thought they were actually good. So it'll be interesting to see if that actually develops and is real over the course of the summer when they come up against these teams. Just to mention Tyrone, who stay at number one, you can see why James O'Donoghue was saying last week that they could get relegated, because they were poor in pre-season. They're coming back from a holiday. They don't tend to go well back-to-back years, but you'd be quietly very encouraged by what you saw from Tyrone at the weekend if you were a Tyrone fan. What's with the laugh?
They don't tend to go well back-to-back years. 3 All-Ireland in 5 seasons, not enough for you, but okay, fair enough.
They literally have never won back-to-back All-Irelands.
Well, it's much harder for them to do that, and there's been reasons in every year. I think that I don't know, I think that they're going to have a good season this year. I think that they're going to be excellent. I think that they have strength and depth that we talked about last week in a way that many teams. I know Tiernan McCann stepping away is a loss for them, but at the same time, you actually need players like that sometimes to step away, to give somebody else the opportunity, so somebody else comes in and gets those minutes, and it turns out they're the next, like the club football in Tyrone is at a level that seems to be higher than most of the other clubs that we see in those games. There's an entertainment value to those that hasn't always been evident in the other ones. So, right.
Yeah,
They're number one on merit.
Yeah,
I don't think they should get knocked off even if they have a bad league. You know,
I'm not sure. You'd have to see how bad the league is, but I think the early signs are very encouraging. Dooher even saying in the aftermath of the game that he parked the All Irelands pretty soon after they won it last year, which suggests to me a manager who has taken the experience of not going back to back into the 2000s and might be able to instill something. But I think there was also maybe he was sending out a bit of a warning shot to some of his players. Actually, I think there was a sense from his comments that some of them did really enjoy the winter and are still on the high of winning the All Ireland last year.
Well,
that's human nature.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they are the ones who, in the roll of honour, will be the one that comes after the greatest team of all time, which means that they get the credit for knocking them off in some ways. Poor Mayo. So we'll talk about Mayo properly again because we talk about Mayo a lot.
We do.
Yeah. All right. It's 8:39 this morning. That is your power rankings and the comments coming in. I always enjoy the fact to do that one. Sorry. London for Sam, says Hugh. Dara says, not exactly in any given Sunday rousing speech for the Dubs from Owen there. He's like...
That was my intention.
No. Well, it's somebody in the dressing room supposed to give that. He's just the one. He's the bulletin board material. You can get an NFT of the power rankings. We should sell NFTs of the power rankings for like €1 million. Would that be about right? That seems
no,
what
I only
they're offered
accept
at the moment.
Ethereum for my power rankings.
Galway in Division 2 is irrelevant. You always have one poor team in Division 1 and one or two better teams in Division 2. It's the way the thing is structured, says Aina. Matthew says, if the Dubs beat Kerry at the weekend, will Kerry move below the Dubs?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, why not?
All right, okay. Ger can never let go of 98 when it comes to talking about Galway. It's not that. It's just that they were the best team in the country before COVID and then they barely won an important game since. Now, in fairness, they had a good comeback against Mayo when the game looked lost and they got it to a point. But what's the real Galway? That's the question we're asking.